So it's good to be back here with all of you. Feels like it's been a little while. 3 weeks, not so much on paper really, but it does feel like it's been longer than that for some reason. Maybe because we had just kind of started to get settled in here to our new home, getting to know all of you, getting to know this place, and then we went away again for a while. And maybe also because a lot happened over those 3 weeks. A lot in the life of our nation, in the world of presidential politics, just to name one example. Now, during the first half of our vacation, we were on the East Coast, keeping up a family tradition that goes back now about 52 years of spending a week at the beach just west of Cape Hatteras, North Carolina. And Meg's dad, Peter Tinsley, who was the founder of this family tradition, had certain rules, certain guidelines for the vacation, which we have attempted to maintain. And one of those is a complete news blackout. So no newspapers, no radio, no TV, no magazines. Peter lived and worked in Washington, D.C. He was a research economist on the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve Board of the United States. And for 1 week a year, he wanted to leave all of that behind. So entertainment at the beach was comic books, or graphic novels, as I guess they're known now, and pulp westerns, and mysteries, and that kind of thing. Plus, of course, lots of hours playing at the beach. Now, it's been more difficult in succeeding generations to maintain this discipline, what with the ubiquity of little internet-enabled devices and all of that, but we do our best to try to, just leave all that stuff behind. But this year, that was particularly challenging. I don't need to tell you why. It's a little bit, every presidential election year is a little exciting, but this one's been a little more than most. And our gospel lesson today reminds us that politics have a way of intruding wherever we go. So Jesus has gone off to the other side of the Sea of Galilee with his disciples. John doesn't say why exactly, but he's kind of setting things up symbolically for this kind of remarkable journey to take place. Journey of liberation. There are all kinds of echoes in this story, not just of the 23rd Psalm and the theme of Jesus as the Good Shepherd of God's people, that John will pick up again a little later on in the Gospel, when he tells the people all to sit down in that place where there is a lot of grass. But also echoes of the Exodus, because, as John says, the Passover of the Jews was near. Great annual commemoration of their liberation from slavery in Egypt and that journey that they made out of bondage to encounter God in the wilderness, to receive the law through the prophet Moses, and undertake a long and arduous journey to the land of promise, where they would be able to live in freedom, in peace, in right relationship with one another, in covenant with God. The echoes of that journey fill this story. But after Jesus has been kind of discovered there on the other side of the sea by a great throng of people seeking what he has to give in the way of healing, in the way of nourishment, in the way of God's justice. After he's fed them all there, and they've all been satisfied from those 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, they acknowledge him as the prophet, the one that Moses said would come, that they were to follow. It says in the gospel that Jesus recognizes that they were about to take him by force and make him their king. It just reminds us that there's a part of us that's always looking for that strong man who's going to take charge and defeat our enemies and make everything right, so that we don't have to, because he has it all under control. But Jesus has another kind of journey to another kind of liberation in mind for these people, one that he's going to begin with his disciples. So we have the second part of the story, this crossing the sea by night, the wind that blew so strong all night, like that wind that blew on the Red Sea and piled up the waves on either side so that the people could walk through the sea to freedom. And here comes Jesus walking through the sea, and his disciples are filled with terror, fear for their lives. And Jesus says, "Do not be afraid. It is I. I am with you." Then the gospel says they wanted to take him into the boat. And with that desire to take Jesus on board with them into the boat, immediately they arrived at the land towards which they were journeying. To the land of promise, the land of justice, freedom, peace, toward which we are all longing to go. They arrived there immediately because Jesus was in the boat with them. That's hard for us to keep in mind during these times. People are vying for our loyalty, vying for our vote, vying for our credulity. And there's all this overheated rhetoric being lobbed back and forth, exaggerated claims of what I can do for you, or exaggerations about the threats that that other person and their ilk pose to you and your family. All of this obscuring the real work that needs to be done, the real problems that face us, that we only are going to be able to resolve if we can work them all out together, leaving nobody behind. It's hard during such times to remember that nothing worth accomplishing comes about unless, as Paul writes to the church in Ephesus, we are rooted and grounded in love. Unless we have that loving desire to take Christ on board with us, so that Christ dwells in us. It is that power of God working in us now, not in some future time, not after our enemies have been vanquished, not if we can elect the right party to the White House, but now, through the Spirit of God working in us, rooted and grounded in love. Amazing things. Things surpassing our knowledge. Even our capacity to think of them can indeed happen. So this week, the Episcopal Church remembers the 50th anniversary of an event that took place in Philadelphia on the 29th of July, 1974, when 11 women who felt called to the priesthood of the church managed to get some bishops who were their allies to ordain them as priests in the church, in spite of the fact that the church as a whole, as an institution, in its rules and regulations, was not ready, did not recognize their ordination as regular or as valid. But these women understood that sometimes love requires action. Sometimes it requires the kind of action that other people don't understand. It doesn't fit into their fixations on the right way to go about things. And because they were motivated by love, love of God, love of the church, love of other women, love of humanity, and recognition of how it is that we are all diminished when some among us are relegated to second-class status by virtue of our sex or our race or our ability. They acted. And these Philadelphia 11, being ordained, were attacked. Attacked because people were afraid that in acting in this manner they were going to blow the church apart. That those who favored women's ordination and those who opposed it would split off from each other, and there would be some kind of terrible schism that could never be reconciled. Now we can look back 50 years later and see that that didn't happen. 2 years later, the General Convention of the Episcopal Church authorized the ordination of women without a great deal of controversy. And that today we can look around our church and we can see that the leadership and the gifts for ministry that the women of the church have always had, always brought, always contributed, are so much the greater for them no longer being restricted from holding any office in the church. You can look at the women who have ministered as priests and deacons and bishops in our own parish here at Trinity or in our diocese. Be thankful that there were some 50 years ago who took the risk of acting rooted and grounded in love in a manner that accomplished things that they could not have imagined. This is the journey of liberation that Jesus continues to call us all to take. One in which our fears, the worst thing that could possibly happen to us or to our country, don't stand in the way of our taking loving action for the sake of others. Don't stand in the way of us inviting Christ to work through us seeking that same working in others, being open to receive the presence of Christ there, even among those with whom we might politically find ourselves in disagreement. I ran across a quote from the Florentine philosopher political philosopher of the Renaissance, Machiavelli, the other day that I found quite helpful, actually. He often gets a bum rap for, Machiavellian has come to mean, sort of an unprincipled way of behaving politically, but in fact, there's a lot more to the guy than that. And the thing that he said that I found so helpful was, there is no evil-disposed man who can have effects that are detrimental to the life of the republic unless it is already corrupt. So that healing the corruption of the republic, that's something that we're not going to be able to accomplish simply by electing this person or that person. That's something that's only going to come about by all of us working together in faithfulness, rooted and grounded in love, seeking the Spirit of Christ to dwell in us, seeking the Spirit of Christ dwelling in others, holding them to that standard of love which surpasses our knowing, through which we can accomplish greater things, things abundantly greater than we can ask for or even imagine. We still have the hope of making that journey together, and it's our responsibility as followers of Jesus not to lose that hope, but to live by it, be nourished by it, and to know that that land towards which we all seek to journey is as close